Hello and welcome to episode 24 of Intruder Theatre in the Making podcast. I'm your host Remi Rachuba and thank you so much for tuning in. Coming back after a little break, I went on holiday to Croatia. That was my third trip to Croatia. Love Croatia. And if you have a chance to go away, even for a couple of days, it's always good to reset and recharge your batteries and get ready for what's coming. I also reflected it's now nearly a year since I started releasing my podcast. And it's been a very interesting journey. We've got a couple of episodes left, so let's see what's going to happen. In this episode also some, I think, useful, important information, but just a little bit of a recap of what I talked about in the previous episode. And in episode 23 I talked to Charles Weber, who composed music for Intruder, and I actually found that episode very exciting because we shared some tracks from Intruder soundtrack. And you can check it out. That was episode 23. Also in the previous episodes, I talked about filling in an Arts Council England application and talked about the whole process and went through the whole application in detail. And these are bonus episodes only available on Apple Podcasts. Also, if you would like to help me with the podcast, if you enjoy it, you can become a patron of the podcast for less than a coffee. That is £1. You can go to patreon.com /Remi Rachuba and you can help me and support me financially with the upkeep of the podcast, because I have costs to do with the hosting company. I didn't get any funding for the podcast. I do it for free, and if you find it useful, I would be very, very grateful for your help. So thank you so much, and I would also put a link in the podcast description. So, as I was saying before, moving ahead with Arts Council funding application, as I said before, I submitted my application and was waiting for the decision. Now, as you might have concluded already from the title of this episode, which is a Swift Resubmission, I didn't get funding from my first application. The decision was negative, and I found out about it actually in quite funny circumstances. I was doing an interpreting job, and then when I finished, my phone beeped, and I checked my email, and that was an email from Arts Council England. And normally when you get a decision, you just get an email saying that there is some kind of a correspondence or a letter on the portal, so on the Grantium. They normally don't notify you, they don't notify you of the decision. You actually need to log into the portal and check it. Now, I tried to do it, I forgot the password, I got locked out and needed to wait 24 hours to find out that my decision was negative. So that's what it was, and I actually dug it up, that email. I got it on the 3rd of December, and it really just said, thank you for applying. I am sorry to tell you that your application was not successful. And then it says your application was not successful mainly because we decided that your application was less strong in relation to quality and or public engagement. And that's really it. You don't get more information. Sometimes you may get a sentence saying that other applications preferred, meaning that there were really loads of other applications and they provided or they gave funding to other projects. So that's what it was. Now, in this particular episode, what I thought I could do, I could really share with anyone who was in the same position as I was what I did when I needed to resubmit my application. And maybe it's going to be useful, helpful to anyone who is going through the same process, or who maybe was, is, or will be in a similar position. Now, I'm recording this episode at the beginning of September 2021. I gather the process is still the same, but maybe it may vary. So there was a couple of things that I did when I resubmitted. Now, also, to give some background information so you are aware of how it worked. As I said, my decision came on the 3rd of December, and when I checked my resubmission, I resubmitted my application on the 18th of December. So literally, I had 15 days to resubmit my application. Now, a couple of things to bear in mind. As you might remember from my previous episodes, I talked about planning. So when I got that decision, of course, I felt, demotivated, and I was a little bit upset. But to be quite honest with you, you get that email and you're like, wow, God, it didn't work out. But the fact that I could resubmit very, very quickly was more motivating than demotivating. And what motivated me more was the fact that I could still do my project. And that was to do with planning, because when I was planning my first application, I always gave myself more time for a resubmission. So I always took it for granted, thinking that, okay, I may not get funding first time around, so I will have to resubmit. And this was the case. So I was more motivated to resubmit, because I knew that I still had time to do my project. Probably if I hadn't had time, I would be more upset. Of course, I was upset, but the fact that I could still resubmit and do my project was this kind of a driving force for me to work on my resubmission within the 15 days. So I always say plan, and always maybe take it, think that, give it some more time, or even have more time for a resubmission, because then you can still do your project. But there was a couple of things that I did when I was resubmitting, and as I said, I only had 15 days. The very first thing that I did was I went to Arts Council England, and I emailed the lady who was allocating appointments with relationship managers. Now, you might remember I already had an appointment with a relationship manager back in September. So I had gone through the process before, where I emailed help desk at Arts Council England, and then I got an email from a woman who was allocating appointments. So this time round, for my resubmission, I went to her directly and I asked her for an appointment with a relationship manager. And she emailed me immediately and she said, Remi, the next available appointment is at the end of January. Now I said, listen, I would appreciate if I could meet someone in 2 weeks, because if I have that appointment at the end of January, that means I wouldn't be able to do my project at all. And she was very, very kind, and she came back to me right away and she said, I've got someone, they could speak to you for half an hour. Is that useful? And I said yes. So I was really, really pleased and grateful that they helped me right away. Now, you may be wondering, why didn't you go to the same relationship manager? Instinctively, I felt I needed to go to the lady who allocated these appointments. For some reason, I felt, you know what, let's go through these proper channels. And it was very, very handy. It was very straightforward. So yeah, That's what I did. The next thing was to do with my old relationship manager. I did tell them, so I was quite transparent, and I told them that the decision was negative, and also I told them that I already requested an appointment with another relationship manager. They were fine with that. They said, great, that's wonderful. What they also did, which was extremely helpful, they provided me feedback from the panel. So, as I just said, the panel in the decision letter gave me only one sentence, but my old relationship manager, they gave me more feedback from the panel. It links really, really nicely with what I said in my previous episodes when I said that the relationship with the relationship manager went beyond our meeting in September. So I already set up an appointment with the relationship manager. I already had feedback from my old relationship manager regarding my application. So that was two things that I did. And then it was just me going and filling in my application, my resubmission. So with the resubmission, literally what you need to do is you fill in a new application. That's what happens. For some bizarre reason, I think it's to do with interpreting. In my mind, I called it an appeal, although it was a resubmission. I don't know why. Initially, I was thinking I'm appealing against that decision, but in fact, it was a resubmission. So I went on to Grantium, and then I created a new project. Again, I titled it Intruder Intrudes, but because it was a resubmission, I put resubmission in the title. I saved it, and literally, to be quite honest with you, what I did next, I simply copied and pasted what I had in the original application and put it in my resubmission. That's what it was. There was just a couple of things that I needed to amend. One of them was the feedback from, I needed to amend the sections that needed to be improved. So that was quality and public engagement. And I mainly amended public engagement. Now, what I added was, you might remember I was doing rehearsed readings in various places, including the Dragon Cafe. That is a center for people affected by mental illness. And what I did was I included feedback and comments from people who came to these readings and what they actually said about the sharing. So this is what I included in my resubmission. I actually copied and quoted people, what people said. That was the main piece of information that I included in the resubmission that I didn't have in the original application. The other thing that I did was I went to the venues and I told them about my resubmission. I think it's always good to be transparent and tell the venues that you didn't get the funding and that you're going for a resubmission, because they need to know. Like it was in my case, I emailed the venues and I told them that I didn't get the funding and this is what I'm doing. And two of the venues came and said, Remi, it's going to be quite late and we wouldn't be able to program your play because we need to know by mid-January. And I said, I wouldn't be able to tell you by mid-January. I would be able to tell you by the end of January. And two venues said, that's too late for us. We need to pull out. So I think fair deal, always be transparent, always tell the venues what's happening because they need to know, even if you resubmit and then you don't get the funding, what happens? You can't do it. The venues program it, and then there's a little bit of a cock up, to be quite honest. So I would always say, if you've got a resubmission or if you are applying for funding again, tell the venues what's going on. So this is what I did. which, of course, as I said, 2 venues pulled out. That created a gap in performances, so I really needed to make my schedule a little bit tighter. And then I needed to show it in my budget. So I needed to remove these venues in the project plan and also in my income and expenditure budget, just removing certain venues and removing costs, and that was an easy fix. It's not a big deal. You just delete these venues or any costs to do with that particular venue or venue hire, etc. So this is what I tried to do in the 15 days. The application was ready, I saved it, then I went to meet the relationship manager. It was a very quick session, as I said, 30 minutes. One of the very useful things they told me was, Remi, remember, the panel has loads of applications, so try to make it as easy for them to go through as you can, so try to include bullet points, and that's what I did. Bullet points, bullet point, bullet point. So I looked at my application, and whatever I could put as a bullet point, that's what I did, and that was quite swift. And I submitted my application on, as I said, 18th of December, so 15 days, this is it. And initially, I thought my resubmission would take a long time, but then it was quite straightforward. What I also find extremely useful with applications is treating me going away, let's say on holiday, like I did go on holiday that particular month. That was the 19th of December. I was going away for Christmas. I treat it as the deadline. So this is why I submitted my application on the 18th of December, because I knew that on the 19th of December I'm going away and I'm not going to be looking or working on my application when I go on holiday, because I always think that holiday is for a reason. It's for you to rest rather than me going away to Austria skiing and then be thinking about Arts Council in England application on a ski lift. Well, I didn't want that. So that was one reason. And the other reason is that when I submit my application on the 18th of December and I'm going away, that is working in my favor because it's already being processed. So I'm not wasting time. And then when I get back in January, that's already 2 or 3 weeks the application is being processed, and then it was just a matter of waiting to see what the decision is, and that was in January. There was a couple of things that I never mentioned in my previous episodes that I'd like to touch upon slightly in this one. So in my original application and in the resubmission, I mentioned crowdfunding because I've always wanted to do a crowdfunding campaign for my solo piece. Now, the thing was, I was only going to do it when I was going to get the money from Arts Council England. I never intended to do it without Arts Council funding. That's how it was. I knew that crowdfunding is hell of a job. It's a 24-hour job, and I really wanted to make sure that I only do it when I get Arts Council England funding. But of course I put it in the original application and in the resubmission. The amount that I put was £3,000 because I thought that was the amount that I could raise. So that was one thing. The other thing that I wanted to mention was, you might remember I had been working with Ed Littlewood on my application, who had been advising me on certain things. Now, I've always wanted Ed to be involved in my project, but because Ed had another project happening at the same time, he said to me, Remi, I really can't work with you on that project because I have another play going on at the same time. So I needed to go with someone else. Now, because certain venues pulled out of my play, and as I said, they didn't want to program it anymore, that meant that my project dates had to change slightly. And when that happened, I went to Ed and I said, Ed, would you be willing to work with me on the project? And Ed said, of course. So this is when Ed became one of the co-producers on Intruder. Now, you might remember I had another person on board, so I needed to let them know that I would like to thank them for the help, but because there was a change and the dates of the project changed, I came back to the person that I had been working on the project initially. And this is what happened. That's quite normal, to change creatives. Although there was another person attached to the project on the application, it's fine. I think it's quite fair to let people know what's happening. The person who had been attached to Intruder said, fine, that's okay. And I knew that whether I get the funding from Arts Council England or not, I will be working with Ed on the project. Now, in January, there was one more thing that I wanted to do, and I was actually thinking of approaching various businesses to work on my project. Now, you may be thinking, okay, what do you mean businesses? Well, I actually wanted to approach Polish businesses in the UK to maybe become sponsors, to give me money for the project in return of doing some promotional activities for them. I had done a similar thing when I was doing rehearsed readings. I actually managed to secure 3 companies who gave me money for my project, for the rehearsed readings, so I thought maybe I could do something similar. So how did I approach businesses? I always think you can always start with your friends, because your friends got companies, and then your friends can help you, and then you can let people know that this particular company gave me money, and that's great. That's wonderful for the project. So there was a couple of things that I did, maybe useful, helpful to anyone who wants to do something similar. So the very first thing that I did was I went and looked at Polish magazines in the UK. Now, I was particularly focusing on Polish companies because I was going to present my play to quite a lot of Polish people, so I thought that maybe Polish companies would be interested in something like that. So I looked at Polish magazines monthly and weekly and checked various companies that advertised their services. I emailed them and I told them about the project, and I told them what I would be offering. And out of 40 companies I think that I emailed, 7 came back to me and said that they wouldn't be interested, or they wouldn't have any resources for this kind of activity. So that was one thing that I did. The other thing that I tried was, I was in touch with a person who had a printing company, and they told me that they have a database of about, I think, 3,000 or 4,000 business emails, and maybe we could create some kind of a mailing list for them to email these companies and let them know about my sponsorship deal. We had a deal that I would pay them £80 for that email. Now, that turned out not to be very, very useful and helpful, because when I got the report, out of 3,000, 4,000, maybe only 7% read that email, and I think 3% clicked on that link to my play. So not very, very useful. Now, another thing that I tried was meeting people in person. So what I did, I signed up for a couple of networking events with a business company in Edinburgh. They were running a few networking events in London, one an afternoon one and one in the evening. So the afternoon one was a very informal networking event at the National Theatre in London. It was a business networking event. They hired, I think, the cafe downstairs, and they ran this kind of very informal coffee networking afternoon, which actually I found extremely useful and helpful. Talking to people in a very relaxed atmosphere. Yes, I met lovely people. I exchanged business cards. That worked for me brilliantly. So if I was doing it again, I would always say, you know what, go to some kind of informal networking event, because that, everyone feels at ease and you can meet people, and that's always great. It's interesting because at the same time, when I was that afternoon, when I was attending that networking event, I knew that in the evening I was going to that very formal networking workshop kind of thing. And I was thinking that, wow, I need to kind of pitch my play. And then what am I going to tell people? I don't know anything about the funding. I don't know whether I'm going to do my play, but I need to play it strong, and I need to tell people that I'm actually doing my play, although there was no money. I didn't know anything about funding at that time, but I think was using my acting skills and telling people that, yeah, I'm actually going to do my play. But to be quite honest, I didn't have any money for my play. But this is what you do, to be quite honest. Now, the event in the evening was, as I was saying, a networking event. It was a workshop, very formal, everyone wearing suits. I really didn't find that event very useful. It was nice to chat. It was more like a workshopy thing. So I did meet someone that turned helpful, but in general, compared with the networking event in the afternoon, that was more formal. So I'm not sure if I would do something similar again. But coming back to the event in the afternoon, I was chatting to a lady, and all of a sudden my phone beeped. And I saw an email from the Arts Council England, and I knew, wow, that was it. The decision about my application. And I said to her, I'm sorry, I need to go to the toilet. And I actually don't know why I even said that. Why would I celebrate a failure or a success in the toilet? Anyway, now when I'm reflecting. But anyway, I went to the toilet only to find out that there was no reception. So I came out of the toilet and was checking the portal now. This time round, I did know my password. So I was going through all the correspondence from Arts Council England on the portal. And previously, the title of the letter was decision letter, so I was kind of looking for something similar, but I couldn't see it. The only thing that I saw was offer letter, which you probably know what it means, but at that time I didn't. I was just thinking, where is another decision letter? Why isn't there a decision letter? Where is it? The only thing that I saw was offer letter, but at that time, I had no idea what it meant. So I was just thinking, why do these people always change phrasing of certain things? Why isn't it always simple? Why does it have to be decision letter and then another time it's an offer letter? Why can't they use decision letter all the time? I just could not understand it. I didn't even know what it meant, offer letter. I just thought it's another way of phrasing something that, anyway. So then out of that frustration, I just clicked on that offer letter, and that was on the 23rd of January. And when I opened it, I'm actually reading it now. It says, I am writing to offer you a grant of up to £11,712 towards the cost of the intruder intros. And that was it. When I read it, I was so happy. I was ecstatic. Oh my God. I phoned my parents. I phoned Ed, Marcus, told my friends, and it's interesting when you get that decision, because you forget everything negative that happened in the past, all the rejection letters, all the rejection. You forget. That's it. 9 or 10 years of waiting for that moment, because you know that you're going to do it. Your dreams have come true. It's amazing. You will be able to tell your story, to present your piece with people, with the rest of the world. Oh, it was such a relief. I was so happy about it. Yeah, a wonderful moment. And now you only know that, wow, I'm going to do it. It's great. It's amazing. So yeah. Now, of course, I got the letter. The letter gave me 2 conditions. One of them was to provide them with my banking details, and the other condition was that I needed to show them that I was going to do my crowdfunding campaign. So, well, that's what I talked about before. And, well, as I said, granting me funding meant that I needed to do my crowdfunding campaign, because that was one of the conditions of the funding that I received from Arts Council England. So that was the next thing I was going to do, crowdfunding. And this is what I'm going to focus in the next, I think 2 episodes of my podcast, how I ran my crowdfunding campaign. These episodes will be bonus episodes, only available on Apple Podcasts, and that's paid content, so you would need to pay to access it. It's only for people who want to know how it all works, what I did, and how I raised £8,000, because actually initially I wanted to raise £3,000, and then I increased that amount to £8,000. After that, I'll be coming back with an interview with Basia Binkowska, the set designer for Intruder, and we'll have an interview talking about her journey, about how she got into designing, and her process. So that's to come after 2 episodes about crowdfunding. So until then, stay well, stay safe, and I'll speak to you next time. Bye for now.